Okay, so here we are, Monday, a little late. It's supposed to be 11, it's about 11:30. I had some stuff going on, but we're here anyway. And
okay, so here we are.
Oops, let me see, got to turn this down, turn this volume down a little bit.
Late.
Okay. And I'm going to be talking about the week ahead, things that are going on astrologically this post-eclipse week. And we'll start here with what we're going to notice a lot for the first part of the week here on Monday with the Moon-Venus conjunction. And if you look up in the sky right now, here on Monday, August 13th, 14th, as the sun is setting, you look up in the sky, you'll see that sliver of the moon, that waxing crescent. As you can see, we have the lunar days, the tithis. We're in the second and third tithi. Hang on, let me switch to my software. There you go. So as you can see, we're in the early phases of the waxing cycle of the moon. The waxing cycle is as the moon is separating from the sun from our vantage point. So right after the sun sets, you see the moon in its crescent sliver getting larger this week. If you saw the moon after sunset last night, on Sunday night, you saw that it was a really beautiful sort of Shiva moon. If you've ever seen Lord Shiva, his image, they usually draw him with the moon on the forehead, and that's sort of the Shiva moon. Although that Shiva moon is supposed to mainly denote the 14th lunar day of the waning moon, but we won't get into that so much. But it still looks the same. It looks really beautiful after sunset with all those nice colors, and the waxing moon. Watch the moon separate from the sun this week. You'll see how far the moon moves. It's really good to track that. Start watching it every day, and you'll see how far the moon moves each day, and that's the length of one nakshatra. So the moon is moving each nakshatra every day. So when you look up in the sky, you'll see that. And today, tomorrow, especially tomorrow, you'll see the moon join Venus, very bright Venus. Venus will be going retrograde in a month and a half or two. I don't remember exactly when it is. Maybe it's a little later. But Venus is starting to slow down. So it's quite big. It's about to go retrograde, so it's getting closer to the Earth. And we'll see those two joined. So the Moon-Venus conjunction will be in Virgo. So this moon in Virgo, shows a real focus on details, precision, things like I'm doing right now, good descriptions of detail, nuance, color, and with Venus in Virgo, even though it's in its debilitated sign, Venus is really good for those kinds of things. And this, so that will be, hang on a second. Yeah, so, when Venus is in Virgo, it is good for like cleaning things, arranging, organizing, and whatnot. And it's certainly good for all types of creativity and organizing things. So that'll be important for the next couple weeks as Venus goes through Virgo. So we'll see Monday and Tuesday. Let's run this here. Let me put it in the days. Okay, so this is Monday. This is the way it is Monday in the middle of the day. And then Tuesday, you see Moon and Venus are much closer together. Then we see on Wednesday, moon is then about to go into Libra. It's in Chitra Nakshatra, which is in between Virgo and Libra. So today it's Uttara Falguni, ruled by the god Aryaman, as it's moving from Leo into Virgo. Uttara Falguni is the nakshatra, which takes the power of Leo, the power of the kingdom, and starts to organize it through official business and contracts and things like that. Again, purely sidereal zodiac, rashis and nakshatras. Then tomorrow on Tuesday, the moon is in Hasta. Again, that's also where Venus is. Hasta literally means the hand. So that hand where we grasp and where we create, where we cultivate and manifest. Again, very much Virgo energy, where we're organized and detailed and, practical, just like the digits of our fingers, just like our hands are very sort of Virgo-like. Then on Wednesday, again, the moon, you see it's about to go into Libra. So it's in Virgo for the first part of the day, then Libra the second part of the day. And that nakshatra of Chitra has to do with also, precision and creativity, but also a lot of passion and enthusiasm and color and nuance. And again, that's the nakshatra that's in between Virgo and Libra. So the creativity of Virgo with the expressiveness and the desire, to share of Libra. That's Chitra Nakshatra, which we'll see on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, the moon is in Libra for a couple of days, middle of the day, Wednesday and then Thursday and Friday. So the middle of Wednesday, then Thursday, Friday, the moon is in Libra and it's joined Jupiter. So when the moon is in Libra, it's very much about interacting with others, compromising, wanting to yield and accommodate others. And this is a big part of, how we learn about boundaries and how we, navigate human relationships. So when the moon is in Libra, it's definitely, oriented towards getting along with people and also satisfying our own desires, because it's about our personal desire first and then trying to match them up with other people's desire. But the moon in Libra it's kind of, it's not the easiest place, just because, the moon, we're trying to feel that wholeness in the heart, that sort of connection to the heart. And Libra is more intellectual and more like sort of negotiating. So it's good for that. So the middle of Wednesday and into Thursday and Friday, it's good for those kinds of negotiations more and that kind of thing. So obviously it puts an emphasis on social interaction, the social contract. So it's good for that. But the thing to understand is on a personal level, because the moon is the part that's really trying to feel that selfless love, not that contractual negotiated agreement as happens with two people. So that can be tricky. And you have to, when someone has moon in Libra, always has to be aware that sometimes they feel like they negotiate too much, or that either they're getting the short end of the bargain, or then they don't want to bargain if they think they're going to lose out and all that kind of thing. So that kind of feeling might be going on in the middle of Wednesday and then Thursday and Friday as we're interacting socially with others, trying to navigate our romantic relationships. We also see the moon is joined Jupiter at that time, so it's very good for classes, taking courses, and studying with your teachers, things like that. And to that end, I will let people know, you should remember that you could come to my class if you haven't signed up for it yet. Vedic Astrology Swiss Army Knife course is going to be starting on Friday, and you can come to it and learn all about the different parts of Vedic astrology that you haven't learned. The sort of Swiss Army knife, knowing which kind of blade to take out to open hidden compartments in chart analysis, because there's so many things that we need to know, and we're not always alert to what things we need to know at what given time. So you could still register for it Friday to Sunday, August 17th through the 19th. You really learn. It's going to be a great immersion, a weekend immersion. So it's 4 hours of study on the internet, Zoom calls, live calls for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you miss one day, it's still recorded for all time. But again, really learning how to take apart the most important qualities of the chart factors, because everything is not as important as everything else. You don't do everything at the same time. You have to know where to start with really getting into the psychology and the motivation of different placements. Like, for example, there's a conversation going on this call right now about exaltation, whether or not Venus is really debilitation, how to manage that debilitation of Venus. I'll talk about it after I'm done with this weekly analysis. I'll talk about how to handle that, because it's really important, and how to handle things like debilitations and exaltations and any placement, really, because they're all important. And those are the things that make someone a good astrologer, rather than just someone who's got a lot of information and throws out a lot of ideas. Because the other thing is that you can learn all these things and learn all of that data. They're just data points. Literally what's called a data point. Like that Venus in Virgo. There's a whole bunch of data points. Because first of all, like if that's someone's natal chart, the fact that it's debilitated, quote, like, and we're putting that word on it, and now we have a lot of things that says, well, it's practical, it's detailed, it's this, it's that, it's not really debilitated, it's that. Actually, all of those things are just spinning around. There's no reason to even get to that until you have to know where to start with even identifying the nature of any planet in any sign. You start with the ascendant and what that planet rules. First of all, that's the most important thing with looking at any individual chart, or the rulerships. Then you need to look at many other things. Like, again, why would any planet be beneficial or detrimental in any sign? Not just in a debilitated sign or an exalted sign. But not just the formula, but what's the concept behind that? And what are you translating? What are the things that you're matching up? So once you get clear about all those things, then the dignities just reveal themselves naturally and show themselves as a product of the explanation, because you're going to be explaining things. If you just say, well, it's debilitated, so that's not really very good, which is what people say when they don't really know what they're doing, they'll just attach a judgment to it. That's not helpful anyway. But if you're just interpreting that planet as one of many planets, then you wind up just interpreting it. And in the interpretation, you'll see why it's beneficial or detrimental. That will be a product of the explanation. So then when you get into the explanation, you'll see the benefit and the difficulty in the explanation. Like Venus it's very much about things being beautiful and things being organized, or things giving us happiness. That's the main thing. What makes us happy? Our desires, right? And we find that in other people, primarily because it's a Rajasic planet. We're looking for that happiness in other people, in other experiences, things that we think are going to make us happy so that we enjoy life. We usually and often sell that happiness, that worldly happiness, and a little bit of happiness for some kind of pleasure, physical pleasure, like through our own body, or some kind of emotional pleasure with other people. That's where we usually try to find Venus energy. So Virgo is a sign of, it's a tamasic sign, which means it's motivated towards finding, literally like finding problems. Not just finding problems, but finding solutions to problems, you would also say. And just kind of focusing on that aspect of life where, for instance, Gemini, which is also ruled by Mercury, is Rajasic, which is motivated toward finding the fun thing, finding the enjoyable thing, having fun with details. Virgo is about avoiding difficult details more than anything, and fixing things that aren't working and identifying those details that could be a little dangerous or that are not perfect, and then perfecting them. So that's the great skill and superpower and benefit of Virgo. So the reason Venus is difficult, and again, the debilitation is just one way to look at it, is that you take that thing that we all want to, that area where we're trying to find happiness and joy, especially in other people and in experiences and enjoying them, and you put it in an area that's mainly focused toward finding problems, finding difficulty, and feeling stressed and worried about problems. And the difficulty is that the person can have a difficult time enjoying things because it's in an environment where we're looking for problems. And again, of course, that can also translate into other people, being nitpicky, fussy, finding fault finding, right? So that's just the thing you would have to alert the person to. If someone has that in their natal chart, again, in my earlier explanation at the beginning of the video, I said one of the good things about Venus in Virgo is it takes that, often you'll see the person is quite creative and they're very good with taking details, which is Virgo, and beautifying them, making them beautiful or perfecting them. Things like art and like writing and editing and things where you want to get in there and beautify, which is Venus, details and structure, like I said, cleaning your home, organizing. Venus in Virgo is quite good for that, right? But then you could see, if in a way where it could go too far, is you can beautify your home to the point to where as soon as someone doesn't use a coaster on the coffee table, you're biting their head off. You're like, ugh! And you take the detail, organizing, antiseptic approach to beauty a little too far. That's extreme, but it's not too extreme, because that's kind of the psychology when Venus is in Virgo, is it can be too focused. And so again, it's only one factor. So many other things are at play. One of the main things that happens when Venus is in Virgo is many times you'll see what's called a very powerful Nichabanga, particularly with Venus in Virgo. Why? Well, because one reason, Mercury is usually very close by. Often Mercury is also joined, right? So many times when Venus is in Virgo, you'll see Mercury joined it, or Mercury will be in Libra, and that's a very powerful what's called Nichabanga, so you always have to look at that. By the way, none of that is happening now. So this is a pure Venus debilitation. There is no Nichabanga on it right now. Again, much of the time, I would even say most of the time when Venus is in Virgo, there's some Nichabanga going on. Now it's not, because Mercury is retrograde and far away in Cancer, but many times it's either with Venus or in Libra where they're exchanging. So that's all. That's how you look at those kinds of things. And that's part of the kinds of structures and explanations that we're going to talk about when we do the Swiss Army knife course, how to approach and understand these things and how to get out of this illusion of knowledge. Because again, a lot of students have this illusion of knowledge. They can even gather a lot of information. But if you're not used to explaining it and you don't know how to explain it to someone, it's really kind of not useless. It's just fuss. It's also just kind of this illusion of understanding, because you don't really understand it until you start explaining it. So you might think you understand it because you have a lot of ideas about it, but try explaining it to someone and see how it comes out. Maybe it comes out fine, but listen to the words that come out of your mouth when you try to explain it and see if it's actually authoritative, and if it's not just a judgment, or if you just don't like to say it because maybe it's in your chart, or, well, it depends on other things too. Of course, but that's just another statement. Well, it's debilitated, so that's not so good, but it depends on other things too, so it might not be that bad. And basically it just descends into astro doublespeak, where you're really not saying anything. You're just you're not really talking about this as a living force, something that's alive, that the person goes, yeah, you're right. That's what I do. You're right. I'm always a little bit fussy. And yeah, so again, there's benefit to that. But in things like the Swiss Army knife course, I'm going to be really going into a lot of these little things like Nichibanga, like exchanges and hemming, and how to use harmonic charts, really specific things that I don't get to drill down into a lot of the time. And it was mainly for my certification course students, because during my certification courses, all these kind of questions come up, but I don't really get to answer them because we're in the middle of a certification course. So this is going to really help me help them to address all these little things that they see all the time, but that I don't really get to dive in there with and bring together in one sort of immersion. So that's going to be really beneficial to my certification course students. I was going to just offer it to them, but I decided to open up to the general public, because the general public can really learn a lot about these things too, because they also talk about these things a lot as well. All right, so take a little drink here, a little coffee. And so we were on Friday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the middle of Wednesday, then Thursday, Friday, Moon, Jupiter going through Libra with, and when you look up in the sky, again, try to connect to the sky this week, because you got some nice light show. You got this waxing crescent moon. You'll have it join Venus the first part of the week. Then you have it join Jupiter. Jupiter is also nice and big up there in the sky. It was just retrograde. So middle of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'll see Jupiter. So, you see Venus and Jupiter in the sky right after sunset now. Look up in the sky and enjoy it. If you're like me, you like to see that. I wind up getting a beautiful sunset over the ocean now. So I just might have to take a stroll down by the ocean and watch that sunset and look at that Venus, that moon, that waxing crescent becoming bigger, and that Venus Jupiter over the sky, up in the night sky with the nice sunset, rainbow colors. It's a joy of life, folks. You're not going to enjoy that. Why the hell are you alive, huh? If you can't enjoy that. So then we're on. So this has us on Friday. The moon is in Vishaka Nakshatra. So again, on Wednesday, it goes to Chitra. Got the sirens coming. So Wednesday, we got the Chitra Nakshatra, which is in between Virgo and Libra. And then on Thursday, it's Swati Nakshatra, which has to do with Vayu. That's the deity, and his son Hanuman is the main deity that we associate with Swati, we mainly associate Swati with Hanuman. And hang on a second. And this is about scattering energy like the wind. Scatter like the wind and disperse your energy so that you can communicate far and wide. You know, one of the biggest qualities of Libra that isn't often talked about is that it's not just about individuality. It's not just about individual interactions. It's literally where we take our interpersonal communication and the words in our head, which has more to do with Gemini, and then we share them with another person, which is Libra. And then Aquarius is where we share it with the world at large in a larger sense. But with Libra, one of the big motivations of Libra is to extend beyond just our individual relationship. And so we see a lot of that in Swati, where we take the message and we transmit it to the masses, right? And then on Friday, the nakshatra is Vishaka. Again, this is the part of Libra where Libra becomes Scorpio, where we take that message of Swati that we've communicated and really connect it to something bigger. So this is why Vishaka, the star of purpose and of sacrifice, and it's where Libra becomes Scorpio, of course, purely sidereal zodiac in Vedic astrology. So the first three sections of Vishaka are in Libra, and then the first pada, the first Navamsha of Scorpio is Vishaka Nakshatra. So as I'm going over this, quickly, just want to let people know that you can get these daily forecasts and get the extensive daily forecast for only 50 cents. And that winds up being not just the daily forecast, but you also get hours of free classes, especially all these free classes. If you really want to understand how to do astrology, how to really elevate, for only 50 cents, man, you can get this really valuable chart reading template, which is about an hour long. You can also get 4.5 hours of these 3 powerful classes I taught at conferences years ago. See how young I looked before I had any gray? Spirit Takes Form, all about the planets, then about the planet signs and houses and their meanings, and then chart analysis. And then this awesome course on quantum Vedic astrology, where I describe Vedic astrology through the lens and the models of neuroscience and quantum physics. Really, really, transformative way of understanding, and in a very literal way, where we talk about the 3 gunas and the 3 brains. We talk about, the double slit experiment. So if you don't understand quantum physics, it's very important to understand. And you see how karma and quantum physics and the reticular activating system in the brain is related to the astrology chart. So, your brain and if this were your birth chart, this shows your biases, your preconceptions, and all those things that they identify in neuroscience, cognitive biases, the RAS, which is literally all the structures of the brain and how they work, is shown in your chart. They're not separate. That's what Vedic astrology is. It literally shows that sort of selection device that shows all of your biases and how your brain works, and then shapes the reality on the quantum level. So all of this really heady stuff is what I describe in these free courses. They're free, they're 50 cents. So when you join the Astrology Training Lab, you not only get daily forecasts for 2 weeks straight, where I break down each day based on the sign, the nakshatra, the tithi, the aspects, the vara, or the lord of the day, but you also get all of these free classes, 8.5 hours worth of free classes. Only 50 cents. You can try it for 2 weeks. It's a great deal. And that's the reason I talk about it here a little bit on these videos, because after people see that deal, they try it. It's very easy. Again, if it's not worth 50 cents to you, then you're just really not that interested, which is fine. You can just, enjoy the free video here. But if you want to actually learn a little bit more, you can check it out. So then we have here, as we go forward, oops, what happened to my screen here? Hang on, change time toolbar. There it is. Okay, so then we go forward to Saturday and Sunday over next weekend. We got the moon in Scorpio. This is Saturday and Sunday. Moon in Scorpio. And on Saturday, it's, oh, this is why. Let me see. There it is. Okay. Winds up being in Anuradha Nakshatra on Saturday. Anuradha is literally ruled by the god Mitra. Mitra is literally means the god of friendship, the god of friendliness. And the god Mitra is often paired with the god Aryaman, who is the god of Uttar Falguni, the god of today. You'll see in the Rig Veda where it's Aryaman and Mitra are often paired together. So again, Aryaman is that god of contracts, making things official, where we take that power of Leo, that power of the kingdom, and delegate tasks and set up structures and systems, just like the systems in the body, because Leo is related to the stomach and Virgo is related to the intestines and delegating all of those different tasks, breaking down and, all the nutrients and sending everything where it's supposed to go, all of that tasks and all that hard work. If you want to think of Virgo, think of the digestive system, especially like the intestines, where we break down all of the nutrients from the food that we digest. Leo digests it, right? Breaks it down in the stomach, and then it goes into all those different areas. Think of how wise your body is to know where to put all of that, where to send all the nutrients and minerals and whatnot. That's Virgo, but it's nothing but a lot of hard work. So to Virgo, everything feels like a lot of hard work. Just like, if you were your intestines, you were just working all the time, no matter what. You're just constantly organizing and putting and sending things where they go, right? So that first deity, that first nakshatra in Virgo is the last one in Leo. And again, this is where you really see the poetry of the nakshatra and Rashi scheme. Again, it's some people have the concept because they like the idea of tropical zodiac better. And then it must just be some afterthought. Well, they no longer line up with nakshatras, but what can you do? They're two separate things. It's like, they're not. I mean, it's like, I don't know how someone gets to that conclusion, because you see such asymmetry, particularly in the nakshatras that bridge Rashis. Uttar Falguni, the deity, the story, the nature of that nakshatra as being the point where Leo becomes Virgo makes perfect sense, because literally that god is takes the passion of Purva Falguni, which is called the star of courtship, and it becomes the star of marriage, for example. Courtship in Purva Falguni, which is fun and enjoyment, and then marriage of Uttar Falguni. It's like the passion and power of the king to all of the tasks of running the kingdom. It's like, boom, it's right there. When you break the nakshatra away from the Rashi, then there's no connection anymore. And again, it just doesn't make sense. And it's not just a belief. I've been saying this for 15 years and describing nakshatras this way to people who have it, and detailed story after story after story of how this works. So anyway, but that nakshatra Aryaman is paired with the god Mitra, which is friendship, friendliness, and getting along. Again, because Aryaman is about contracts, but the most important thing in a good contract is accordance with the person you're in the contract with, being fair, being a Mitra. Mitra is literally like not just friends or friendship, but honor and dignity and accommodation and understanding that friendliness is really the best thing in any contract. Because first of all, we don't want to have a contract unless we like somebody. And if you're in a contract with someone that you don't like, that's the worst thing first. That's why it's always the most important thing. It's not always the most important thing that you like the person, but that you trust them, or that there's there's a sort of friendliness flowing, right? So that's the middle nakshatra in Scorpio, right? And I think it's also why Scorpio has a lot of that official sort of capacity to like to do like official work. Because again, that god Mitra is paired with Aryaman and setting up contracts and official agreements. Scorpio often, and especially with this nakshatra, likes to work with others, or have partnerships with others, and have that kind of agreement, forge these agreements. It's a very deep connection, right? And again, you can see it in the signs as well, because most of, because this section of Scorpio has that quality of friendliness and devotion. And that's really the higher quality of Scorpio, is that sort of devotional nature. And Anuradha Nakshatra, literally, Radha is the beloved, the most beloved of Lord Krishna. The most beloved devotee of Lord Krishna was Radha. And she wasn't his lover, romantic partner, even though a lot of the gopis had this romantic desire for Lord Krishna. She was more of like the divine friend, right? And again, it even shows that divine friendliness that comes in a spiritual sense, where, because when someone becomes a lover, then the relationship becomes much more sort of grabby and mine and desires, and it's not like the friend, like the divine friend. And so that idea of God as a divine friend is very, very deep. And it's a great way to approach God, even rather than some overlord figure or some, fearful thing, something we're afraid of or something like that. It's like your most trusted friend, where there's no judgment, or, that's really the spirit. So that's the highest qualities of Scorpio, as well as that devotional quality and that friendship, because that sign as well, they're very good friends. They're very loyal to their friends, and very, very much will hang in there. So again, it's that quality, very much a quality of Scorpio, Anuradha, right? But again, when you break up the zodiac, half of it's in Sagittarius. Again, you can always say anything, because astrologers kind of make anything up. But it was never that way. It's always been this way for 3,000 years of Vedic astrology. So again, enough of that. But you want to understand these qualities are really baked in. So that's on Saturday. And then on Sunday, Jyeshta Nakshatra, which is the part of Scorpio. Again, it's Lord Indra. It's that sort of heroism, that emotional heroism of Indra. And again, Scorpio is that sign of power and conquest. And the negative qualities of Scorpio can be the sort of war, getting into wars, especially like over getting our feelings hurt, and emotional wars, and fighting the wrong battle because we're trying to vindicate our ego. That's the negative quality of Scorpio, when they can just get into, once they get their feelings hurt, then just going to war to vindicate, and, often from some place of a wounded sort of victimology, I've seen over the years when Scorpio gets in difficult straits, it's often, again, trying to protect others in the future, because you shouldn't be doing that. So I'm fighting, sticking up for everybody else. And they're always ready to defend the indefensible, which they are. That's why Scorpio also has a lot of that in the highest sense, to be great counselors and defend the, other people's emotional problems and pain. They're very much wanting to defend and fight. It's, ruled by Indra, who was the king of the gods and the one who had that sort of emotional heroism. But it can get twisted when it revolves around personal insecurities. Then it can just be the license to, fight just to win some ego struggle, right? And, you need to be stopped, like trying to stop this horrible wrong when it's really not a horrible wrong. It's just somebody's in an ego struggle. So this is the difficulty of Scorpio, and you can see it in Jeshta especially, where, you know, they'll just get in there and battle. By the way, our current president has this moon and Ketu there, and you can see kind of him just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, just constant battling. Again, moon is debilitated in Scorpio. So over getting feelings hurt, emotional wounds, thin skin, battle, fight to the death. Again, this is what Lord Indra was doing. Indra was always on the verge of losing the kingdom. It says Sam kind of making anything up. This is what astrologers do. Astrologers and astrology students have to be really careful. They can kind of make anything up. Oh, they do. They do, we do. I'm really careful to try not to, and to know what I'm talking about. And if I don't know something, say I'm not sure. I'm saying this, though, again, I'm not trying to be critical. And it's not making things up, like pulling things out of the blue. But what happens is if you don't have a good system of making predictions and understanding what's going on, there are so many threads to pull on. Oh, it's because there was an exchange. Oh, well, it's Nichabanga. Oh, well, it's that. Well, in this case, it's that. And just always finding anything to kind of justify something rather than having precise methods. Like having precise methods where you can say precise things, repeatable, that work. Right? You can always, and if you don't, you can always justify saying anything. I mean, and honestly, I've heard some people that are, like with the zodiac thing, that are, oh yeah, well, Revati is part of Aries because this, or just saying anything. It's like, come on, right? And that's not, I don't mean to just be heaping criticism on that, because if people want to do that, that's fine. I'm just trying to draw out this part of it. But I don't even just mean when it comes to zodiacs or whatever, because I could make the case right now. I could argue that, you know, Anuradha is part of Sagittarius if I wanted to. I mean, I could kind of say anything. I could say that Magha is part of Virgo if I wanted to, even though Magha is like literally the king sitting on the throne. But I could, if I felt like it, I could make something up that make it sound like it's in Virgo, actually, that same section of sky, you know. Again, I'm just using that as an example, but that's not the only one. God knows it's not the only one, and it's not even the worst one. Often, you know, what happens is there's just general kind of overview about how to make predictions about things, right? Like, you know, when you start looking at dashas, you know, rather than having a formula, like I have a formula that I've been using for more than a decade that shows the results are produced by when the rulers are active. You look at the dashas and the planets that are ruled, that are activated by rulership, those are where the karmas pop out. And it's very specific. It's not just saying anything, right? But oftentimes it's like, oh yeah, they were in Venus. And then when you have a hard time trying to find why Venus would show that, it's like, because there's not a system or formula, it's like, oh yeah, well, and then it gets into some explanation that you would never see repeated again. It's just in this one thing, and they're like just kind of saying something to try to make it. And that's not with good astrologers, by the way. But, you know, it's a tricky thing. All astrologers, we all have to be careful with that. You know, we have to be careful about just saying anything and making things up. It's what makes astrologers, it's where they lose credibility. Again, and I'm just saying in general, for all astrologers, all of us, we all need to be careful of it. And, you know, it's a tricky thing because there's so many things to look at, particularly with Vedic astrology, you know? And so, let's see here. So to get back to it, yeah, over the weekend on Sunday, we had that Lord Indra is the ruler. And again, we have to be careful when the moon goes through Scorpio because it is the debilitated sign. And it's that sign where, you know, again, where we can get just sort of tangled up in our own emotions. And again, when Scorpio is devoted and dedicated to something higher and more pure and something that really connects to the heart, and they work through the darkness and insecurity, there's a lot of devotion and loyalty and power in that sign. It's very courageous, and especially, to help others get through, dangerous, waters. The other two water signs are sattvic. So water is generally a sattvic element. Scorpio winds up being tamasic water. That's why it can be difficult, because it's the difficulty of the emotions rather than the purity, right? So this is why the moon is debilitated there. We're talking about debilitation, right? And you notice how long it took me to even get to saying debilitated. That gives you an example of how much I prioritize that word, right? I don't even prioritize saying that very much. I talk about the nature of the sign and the planet in the sign. Like I said earlier, walk in the spirit of walking the talk, you don't have to worry so much about attaching those words, especially debilitation and all that. You have to talk about the nature of the planet in the sign, and the word will take care of itself. You'll see why. You'll see why it's difficult, why the moon through Scorpio is difficult when you just describe it, because we're facing our emotional vulnerabilities and things like that. And so it's, that's where that's not easy for the moon, which likes things to be easy and pure. And so Scorpio is that sign where we're aware of our vulnerabilities. And when the moon is there, it's just it's this constant focus on our emotional vulnerabilities. And it can make us just easily triggered emotionally. Again, we could say this certainly about our current president, whether you like him or not. I'm not getting into that, but he's certainly easily baited, easily triggered. Doesn't take much to get under, very thin-skinned. It's obvious to anyone watching that he gets his feelings hurt all the time, which is dangerous for someone with that much power. That's why it's dangerous. But this is a quality of a debilitated moon. In his case, very debilitated, and with Ketu, right? So it's like just constantly getting his feelings hurt and lashing out, right? So over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we can have a quality of that feeling of getting our feelings hurt. And then on Monday, what's going on here? Time interval, step forward. Oh, okay. And then on Monday, get it here, the moon will go into Sagittarius in the middle of the day Monday. So it actually, for half the day Monday, the moon is also in Scorpio. In the middle of the day next Monday, the moon goes into Sagittarius and it's joined Saturn, which will be, Sagittarius is that inspired sign that comes after Scorpio. And it's where we're more inspired, focusing on our higher inspirations and purposes after encountering those vulnerabilities in Scorpio, right? And then now the moon will also be joined Saturn when it's in Scorpio, which is about wanting to bring our energy inward, introspection, and reflection, facing our own difficulties and things like that, rather than projecting outward. And so, as it says here, speaking of the water analogy, talking about riding the bigger waves, surfing the bigger karmic waves. Yeah, that's a lot of what's happening now. And so wanted to make this video in the wake of the recent eclipses. On the other side of that, we're definitely experiencing a lot of these deeper possibilities, but of course it's not always so easy to just sort of bounce back, because things shift quite a bit. And as I said, if you're interested in studying more, you can still register for the upcoming class on the Vedic Astrology Swiss Army Knife. I just posted the link there. And as you see, that's this weekend, and you'll really learn and have more at your disposal. And so you'll know how to unlock the chart with more skill. And you can also get a little meta here. You can also join the Astrology Training Lab. If you want to get daily forecasts, if you want to get 8 hours of classes, learn about the brain science, neuroscience, how your chart shows your cognitive biases through neuroscience, how you then create your world on the karmic quantum level after that. Quantum Vedic astrology, it really delivers on that. It's not just a lot of endless theory. And then also 8.5 hours of how astrology really works. You could do that as well. So anyway, I'm glad that we got to do this, and I'll be talking again on Thursday. I think what I'm going to be doing on Thursdays is teaching things. And I think what I'm going to teach this Thursday is I'm going to do a class Thursday at 11 a.m. on this quantum Vedic astrology and neuroscience. I'm going to teach you that on Thursday. Check it out. It'll be live here Thursday at 11. I'm going to explain those things to you about the brain, neuroscience, how Vedic astrology works on the quantum level to show your biases in your brains through the 3 gunas, and then how you take that brain, how that forms your brain, your biases, your RAS, your reticular activating system, explain to you how that works. And then also how from there you create the world on the quantum level as seen through quantum physics, and explain some quantum physics to you. You'll really like this. It'll be on Thursday at 11 a.m. So you can come back then and see it, and see if I have any questions here. It'll be great. So thanks, folks. Have a good one.